Van Damme kills a kid and fights a furry. We're heading to sudden death. Sudden Death is a 1995 Jean-Claude Van Damme vehicle that represents the epitome, or maybe it's the nadir, of the Die Hard in a blank premise, which is basically fish out of water character gets stuck alone fighting terrorists in or on something, like Die Hard on a bus, on a train, on a boat, in the rain, on a plane, on a plane, on a plane, on a plane, and in this one, in a hockey arena. And the reason why I'm talking about it today is because it keeps coming up in my videos, sometimes by accident, and sometimes I find ways to reference it. And I have very fond memories of this movie, not just because it's the last Jean-Claude movie I saw in theaters, not just because I am a huge Penguins fan, and I lost my mind that there was a whole movie that took place inside the old igloo, not just because I was a big Luc Robitaille fan. Here's his starting lineup action figure, his jersey. And never mind the fact that he's in this movie prior to the one and only season he played for the Penguins. Also, coincidentally, the only authentic Penguins jersey I ever bought in my life, and it became immediately obsolete. Probably the reason why I only bought one authentic jersey in my lifetime. I have fond memories of Sudden Death, because it is a quintessential 90s action movie that came just a touch too late when these types of movies were going out of fashion. Like 95 is pretty late for something like this. It's got an outrageous premise, ridiculous stunts, motherfucking Powers Booth as a scenery-devouring villain. I am just overall really excited to talk about it. But before we dive into the movie, let's see where Jean-Claude was in his career at this moment. Throughout the 80s, he was building a resume of reliable, if interchangeable, martial arts B-movies. Bloodsport, Kickboxer, Lionheart. These are movies I watched over and over as a kid. And heading into the 90s, there seemed to be a conscious effort to try and elevate Jean-Claude to a bigger stage with higher caliber directors alongside someone like Steven Seagal. There was Universal Soldier in 1992 with Roland Emmerich, Hard Target in 93 with John Woo's first entry in the American film market, and Peter Hyams, who directed Time Cop in 1994, which turned out to be Van Damme's biggest hit. Now, Van Damme was gaining momentum. And then...
You have made me a happy man.
Next, I'll make you a dead one.
Street Fighter the movie. Now, when you look at his career overall, that's the tipping point. Everything changes after that. Like, the movie made some money, but it was critically reviled and featured a horribly miscast, self-admitted coked-out Van Damme in the title role of Guile, a dude who was definitely American. Just look at that shoulder tattoo. And, ignore that Belgian accent.
What will prevent him from taking more hostages next month?
But it does have one redeeming quality. That's Raul Julia, who gives... I don't know how else to describe this, but it is a delicious performance in that movie.
Game over!
Unfortunately, Sudden Death came out in the wake of Street Fighter, so I think it got lost in the shuffle and suffered because of it. The movie began as an idea from Karen Baldwin, the wife of the Penguins owner at the time, Howard Baldwin. They thought the Civic Arena would make like a really cool place for a setting for a movie. And I love that instead of making an actual hockey movie in your hockey arena, they were like, how do we film our business in a way that shows 17,000 of our customers in horrific danger? And that's what the movie is. It is a Die Hard clone set in a hockey arena with Van Damme's character as a firefighter who gets caught up in this whole terrorist plot. Sudden Death opens with Darren McCord, firefighter, doing some firefighting. He's currently saving a young girl, but he's trapped under some rubble, and luckily, his buddies are on the way. He's telling them, hey, come on, I'm over here, I'm over here. Holy shit. We are 4 minutes and one shot into this movie, and they've already killed a toddler. On screen with close-up for confirmation. I mean, okay. I did not remember that, and I did not expect it. Luckily, we are whisked away to an ESPN production truck, and I am soothed by that old ESPN hockey music.
Hand it left. Show me what God sees. Okay.
Really, it's the only thing that can make me forget that they just killed a child on screen. Now, it's Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals, and we're outside the Civic Arena, a place I went to often while growing up, and this was the peak of my hockey fandom. I watched nearly every single game, and I feel like this is a movie they made just for me. As for the plot, the vice president of the country is a fan of hockey and used his immeasurable power to secure a ticket to Game 7.
And having a vice president here turns a headache into a concussion.
And this affords some terrorists the opportunity to hold him for ransom. Pretty much the whole thing. We catch up with Darren. I accidentally killed a kid, McCord, who makes an unannounced trip to see his son on his birthday. His ex-wife is none too happy about that.
You can't stay. We're just getting ready to leave.
But Darren's got the upper hand.
I just got these.
Looks like those might be Penguin tickets.
It's the 7th game.
So we've established now that he's a shit fireman, a bad dad, and a terrible husband.
Darren, you can't just show up here and take them without talking to me first.
All because of what happened at his job, which clearly wasn't his fault. Like, this guy is probably suffering from some trauma that wasn't properly dealt with because this was the 90s and no one cared about mental health.
He was trying to save a little girl, and he Are was we in a going to the burning game? building.
And all of his relationships have crumbled because of it, and now he's trying to buy back his children's love in whatever way he can. But for the purposes of this movie, this is just a plot device to get Darren's kids to the arena. Now, the terrorists put their plan into motion. We meet their leader, Powers Booth. His character does have a name in this movie, but I don't remember them ever saying it, and it doesn't matter anyway, because you can't get higher than Powers Booth. So I'm just going to call him Powers Booth for the rest of this video. And for some reason, he's in a spiffy tuxedo. This doesn't play into the story at all. And if anything, it draws more attention to him, but I love it. And this is an all-time villain performance. If you've never seen Sudden Death, I mean, you got to watch it just for Powers Booth. Everything he does is incredibly over the top in the best way possible. Like when he sets this timer for his men to pack up, and then for no reason, when the timer goes off, this cute little penguin plushie explodes. It's so unnecessary other than the product placement, but it's absolutely essential to the greatness of Sudden Death. Now, Darren's kids start to suspect he's not much of a firefighter. In fact, he might just be a janitor.
You got a burnout light bulb.
Could you change it? I've got my hands full.
Is that what Daddy does? Change light bulbs?
Which immediately makes his son think his dad is a worthless piece of trash.
Firemen don't do that kind of stuff.
They spend some time establishing this chef.
Here, I want to show you something.
And these are the types of characters that make or break a movie like this. If the fringe characters are fun and have a little extra depth,
Whoa, cool.
you know you're in for a good time.
That's why you won't hear anyone complain about my cooking.
Also, this chef is given an awful lot of power to decide who gets access to the vice president.
Nobody goes in that elevator, and I mean nobody, even if they have the proper ID, unless this man says it's okay. If he doesn't know them, they don't get in that elevator.
What, do they just run out of Secret Service guys? They have to rely on Giuseppe here? Speaking of characters with way more power than their job should afford, Darren the janitor takes his kids straight into the locker room moments before Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. This is the stuff I ate up as a kid, seeing the jerseys of their current stars, Yager, Shel Samuelson, Ron Francis. Great touches. None of those people are actually in this movie. The only actual Penguin is Luc Robitaille, who at the time of filming hadn't even started with the Penguins. It was originally supposed to be Penn's superstar Mario Lemieux, but that was the season Lemieux took off to deal with Hodgkin lymphoma. Now, there's this great interaction between Darren and Tolliver, played by Jay Caulfield, a former Penguin.
Dad said you should be sitting in a rocking chair instead of on the ice.
Oh, is that so?
And it's funny, but it also establishes that Darren played goalie when he was younger.
My dad played. He was a goalie.
Was a long time ago.
I'd come by some afternoon. I'll show you the difference between the game you played and the one I play.
Which somehow, someway, will come into play later. After that, the vice president shows up, and I like that Sudden Death is like, hey, whoa, let's not shoot for the moon here. Like, the stakes can't be too high. The president ain't coming to a Stanley Cup final. Vice president's fine. Another fun touch is this subplot where we cut to a completely different movie altogether. It plays out like a short film where this woman is gardening and then she's forced into her house at gunpoint. You have no idea who either of these people are at first, just that they're going to sit down and watch the Stanley Cup together. And then we find out why they spent so much time establishing the chef.
Andrew, it's your wife. Hello?
Andy,
We have your wife.
they will not hurt me if you do as they say.
If you hurt my wife, how?
You'll what? Burn my toast?
Tuxedoed Booth appears, and the chef has to let him through. If only the chef knew what these guys had up their sleeves. Then we get the actual commentators, Mike Lange and Paul Steigerwald. Lange is a legend of Pittsburgh with tons of classic phrases that everybody knows, and they're largely nonsense.
Oh, shave my face with a rusty razor. Oh, let's go hunt moose on a Harley. Oh, scratch my back with a hacksaw.
But entertaining nonetheless, which could, I think, describe this movie. Nonsense, but entertaining nonetheless. And they use Jeff Jimerson, the actual Penguins national anthem singer, with his magnificent, beautifully coiffed 90s hair. Hilariously, all the terrorists respect the anthem, respect the flag, including the one at home with the chef's wife. For a little bit, at least.
Well, gotta go.
Hold on a second. We are 15 minutes into this movie, and we've already got a dead toddler and a dead old lady. What's next? A beloved animal?
Please, he needs a doctor.
Not anymore.
Okay, not quite, but goddamn sudden death. You are cold as ice. Speaking of killer one-liners, Powers Booth powers through a string of them within seconds.
Go ahead. Dead heroes get the best funerals. His wife's recently deceased. He would have been lonely without her.
He has a 5-year-old boy, a 3-year-old little girl, and his wife's pregnant.
I'll send a card.
What kind of lunatic are you?
The best kind.
What is your objective?
I get funny all over when you talk like that.
The commentators cover that Brad Tolliver, the goalie, has a fever.
He could hardly walk today, much less skate, with a fever of 104.
Which was clearly added later because they had him on screen earlier and he showed no signs of sickness whatsoever. But it was added for a very good reason, which we'll find out later. McCord's subplot with his kids continues, where his daughter loves him, but his son hates him. Less because he's an absent father, and more because he's a lowly janitor.
Dad's not really a fireman anymore, Emily.
Meanwhile, Booth lays out his plan, which involves...
all that money is going to be released and transferred to banks of my choice.
He's going to execute hostages after every period if he doesn't get what he wants. And at the end of the game, bonus, if they still haven't met his demands...
everyone in this box and in this arena will die by explosion, fire, and panic. Enough bombs have been planted in this building to stop all the clocks in the hemisphere.
And man, I totally believe him after what he's already done. Powers Booth, he's just having so much fun in this role.
I can only assure you that I won't kill any more people than it takes to convince everyone of my sincerity. Will you make that cow stop moaning?
Once Booth has the VP hostage, word gets out. Darren, the bad dad that he is, just leaves the kids alone to go do his job.
Don't leave your seats.
But his son has a mini super soaker and uses it on Emily.
Daddy's a fireman! He's too scared to be a fireman. I hate you.
Of course, Emily runs off. At the end of the first period, Powers Booth...
but you all agree that the mayor's wife's been most annoying.
does what he said he was going to do. I mean, the complete disregard for women and children in this movie is shocking. Anyway, Emily discovers that Iceburgh is now a bad penguin. Darren gets back, and he's super mad at his kid for letting the other kid run off.
I told you two not to move. You don't move!
Which is excellent parenting. How dare you disobey me, you goddamn kids who are way too young to be left unsupervised? Iceburgh then kidnaps Emily, which gives Darren a direct interest in the terrorist plot, and also leads to Van Damme chasing a woman in a penguin mascot outfit. It does not get any better than that.
Jerk off.
Wait, it totally does. Because now we get to see Van Damme fighting a woman in an Iceburgh costume. It is so funny. He punches the mascot's head as if that's gonna do anything. Like, this gets really close to parody here. And thank God this everyman knows martial arts. I guess he is a fire marshal. Martial art. Van Damme is then threatened with increasingly dangerous cooking appliances. It culminates with him throwing red pepper flakes into Iceburgh's mouth. And then... death by dishwasher. Is this the best fight ever committed to film? Oh fuck yeah, unequivocally best ever. But there's some serious tonal whiplash going on here, because just before this joyously silly furry fight, Iceburgh was going to shoot Emily, but ran out of bullets. And then afterwards, Powers Booth tells her,
"Would you like it if I filled your little mouth with spiders?"
What?
"Would you like it if I filled your little mouth with spiders?"
Darren goes and finds security to show them the penguin he murdered, except, as is usually the case when you think you've killed a life-size penguin, it's not there.
Where's the 7-foot penguin?
She was there.
Now, this leads to another fight with the security guard who's one of the terrorists, but before we get to that, we gotta deal with a missing penguin. Because this seems like the setup in Die Hard when the big guy gets hanged, but then makes a miraculous comeback later. And watching this again, I was waiting for her to return the whole time. And then she just never does. So what happened to the penguin? Was it just a fever dream? Did another terrorist find her and stash her away in a closet? Did she somehow come back to life and then decide she's gonna turn her life around? This has haunted me for 25 years. If anybody has the answer, you gotta let me know. It's killing me. Anyway, a second fight happens in this kitchen, and when you're thinking well, this one's not gonna be able to top him fighting a Penguins mascot, they hit you with Murder by Chicken Bone. Here we get a great reminder that we're in 1995 when McCord can't get a payphone to work. Oh no! Eventually, he finds Zach Morris's cell phone and calls this movie's Al Powell, Hallmark, who is completely inept, getting outsmarted by Powers Booth at every turn.
You stay where you are. We are going to do this by the numbers.
Great line from Van Damme here.
What number was that? 3?
And it's obvious McCord is on his own.
I'll find the bombs myself.
McCord, you can't do anything alone.
We finally learn Powers Booth's backstory, and it turns out he's in government and counterfeiting, and it's actually the least interesting thing about him. The movie seems to know that too, so it cuts to some cops trying to drop into the arena, but instead getting shot by a bazooka. Powers Booth goes back to being interesting simply by chomping on shrimp and smoking a cigarette while they figure out how to dispatch the agents infiltrating the arena. Someone finally makes the most obvious joke you can in a hockey movie.
If those guys want to see a hockey game so much, maybe we should put them on ice.
But the beauty of this is, it's not a joke at all. It's an actual suggestion. The parade of death continues when the second period ends and Powers Booth shoots the mayor. I think the thing that's so surprising about all these murders is they're just done without hesitation. Like in Die Hard, when Hans Gruber kills Ellis, it's this long, drawn-out process where he's trying to get as much information out of him as possible before discarding him. Here, everyone is disposable. And I almost forgot that the arena is rigged with bombs.
This place is ready to explode.
But don't worry, Darren's on the case. Somehow he just finds one, and also, somehow, knows how to defuse it. And they do this cool thing here where McCord controls the billboard to communicate with the cops, but that doesn't last long because Bazooka Joe. The third period starts, and Darren does more firefighting by creating this hidden nail gun. Usually when a movie spends a good minute watching a character carefully craft a weapon, it's a setup for a payoff much later, preferably long enough that the audience has forgotten about it. But not sudden death. Oh no, literally, the next scene.
Bye-bye.
Then, out of nowhere, Hallmark just shows up. McCord gives him a Pittsburgh welcome.
That's for doing your job half-assed and putting my daughter's life in danger.
Then the two of them try to figure out where all the bombs are hidden. Apparently, at some point, off camera, McCord drew up a detailed map of all the locations he thinks the bombs are placed.
I made some educated guesses.
But he's pretty much spot on. It's really hard to believe.
Let's hope I know what I'm doing.
But I don't care. And then, the big twist.
McCord's disarming your bombs. Is he guessing? He's a pretty good guesser.
Hallmark and Powers Booth are in cahoots. No wonder Hallmark's been so bad at his job. They plan to grab Darren's kid, and Powers Booth can't help but go way too far as usual.
I always wanted a son.
Unfortunately, McCord's kid has suddenly had a change of heart and decided to listen to his dad.
My dad told me to stay here, even if the building fell down.
And so Hallmark goes back to McCord and reveals everything.
You must be real proud. I'm gonna be real rich.
And remember that mini super soaker from earlier?
What are you gonna do, drown me?
No.
Apparently Hallmark's clothes are made of oxygen and dryer lint. And we finally get our interaction between McCord and Powers Booth in a direct rip of Die Hard. It definitely doesn't reach the heights of Die Hard, and it also doesn't set up a yippee-ki-yay catchphrase at the end of the movie, so Powers Booth just overcompensates.
Oh, now, Tom, come on. If we're gonna play, you got to play nice.
I'm not afraid of you.
Oh, sure you are. I'm the scariest person you've ever seen. I'm gonna kill your daddy. What do you think about that?
Tolliver's fever finally gets a payoff as he has to come off of the ice.
Coach, I really feel like shit.
Go to the locker room.
And thank God he does, because it gives us the most ridiculous part of the movie. Yes, more ridiculous than Van Damme fighting a hockey mascot is Van Damme in the Penguins locker room looking for a place to hide. He sees Tolliver sucking oxygen, and he has an idea.
Look at that. I don't believe this. Brad Tolliver is actually coming back into the game right now.
Oh, but it's not Tolliver. I love that he's sitting next to his teammates on the bench. These guys that he's been through 82 games of a regular season, plus the entire playoffs. And no one notices that he's not the same person. And then...
And get the fuck in there.
Yeah. He found his way into Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. And by the way, he is not just in the game. He makes a crucial double pad stack glove save. At this point, I thought it might just turn into a straight up hockey movie where McCord helps them win the Stanley Cup, because I was like, how the fuck is he going to get himself off the ice? But guess what? Oh, he finds a way, and it's the best way possible.
What's he doing? He's going to get a game misconduct and a fine, Major.
Now, the game's about to end, but Robitaille gets a breakaway and he ties it in the final seconds, which leads to my favorite thing, saying the name of the movie in the movie.
We're going to sudden death overtime.
Sudden death? Sudden death.
Sudden death overtime. That's what sudden death is all about.
McCord uses his magical firefighting skills to build a bomb, then very quickly scampers to the roof of the arena. Why is he going up there? Well, it's not explained at first, but don't worry, it's worth it. This section also has some of the most inspired shots in it, like this one. Very cool. Then, due to shenanigans, the scoreboard explodes, leading to a great line reading from color commentator Paul Steigerwald.
Holy shit!
And I remember that being a big deal at the time. We were like, oh my God, Steige swore! Then, in a moment that perfectly encapsulates everything great about this movie, Powers Booth randomly tells the VP,
Dang, I'm immortal.
while the nerdy tech guy plays Doom. Just entertaining nonsense. And now it's revealed why Darren climbed to the top of the arena, to get into the VP box. But hang on. How was that his plan? He thought the easiest point of entry was to climb to the roof of the arena, use more magical firefighting skills to hotwire the retractable roof, jump down onto the scoreboard, find some sort of lighting rig on a zip line that sends him into another light that he could drop onto at the exact right time, knowing that his body weight would then dislodge the light and swing him over top the box so he could throw his homemade bomb on top of it and blow a perfect human-sized hole into it. Oh my God, sudden death rules. Powers Booth is able to escape though, and everyone leaves the arena in about 4 minutes, except for his son, of course. And then Powers Booth sets off the remaining bombs, but since Darren defused a bunch of them, the worst thing that happens is a couple people slip on some pee-pee water. Booth, now in a completely unnecessary but hilarious disguise, snatches McCord's daughter again and heads up to the roof for a helicopter escape. Up on the roof, Powers and McCord have their fight, and Powers is about to shoot McCord's daughter.
I'd rather you spent the rest of your life remembering you couldn't save your little girl.
So McCord dives to save her, getting redemption for him letting a kid die in the beginning of the movie, although I don't really think it's like a 1-to-1 ratio here because it wasn't his fault in the beginning. That's why I want to tell him, Darren, It wasn't your fault, buddy. It wasn't your fault. Then, with one arm, McCord hops on the helicopter ladder and shoots underneath the helicopter, killing the pilot. And look, I don't know how a helicopter would actually fall in flight after something like this, but I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be perfectly vertical and straight down, and also very slow. But I wouldn't have it any other way. And finally, McCord's kids have a father they can be proud of, instead of a shell-shocked firefighter piece of shit who was failed by a healthcare system and needed to endure an even more extreme trauma to override the trauma of his past. Way to go, Dad!
You should have seen my dad. My dad is a fireman.
And that's Sudden Death. Sudden Death was released on December 22nd, 1995, the perfect Christmas gift. It opened in 8th place with $4.7 million, but ended up grossing $64 million worldwide against a $35 million budget. Pretty good. Not great, but pretty good. And it would be the last time Van Damme would see that type of success, as his subsequent movies would make less and less money. But for me, this is a top-tier Van Damme movie. At its best, it is incredibly silly. Van Damme fights a penguin. He takes the ice as a goalie. Powers Booth threatens to put spiders in a little girl's mouth. At its worst, it's jarringly violent and cruel towards its most innocent characters. Like Powers Booth threatens to put spiders in a little girl's mouth. But there is pure joy in watching Van Damme run around an arena I frequented as a kid, cracking jokes about C4.
This is the most powerful plastic explosive in the world.
While my favorite hockey team plays in the Stanley Cup Finals. Like, I still can't believe this movie exists. It is a very precise 110 minutes and 12 seconds, according to the back of the Blu-ray, and they could have trimmed about 10 minutes, but I don't think it overstays its welcome. It remains consistently fun to watch. Anytime things start to slow down, like when they're giving exposition for Powers Booth's character, there's always something to perk the movie up, like a guy getting shot out of midair by a bazooka. It's total nonsense, but it's entertaining nonsense, and I had a blast rewatching it. Now, I might just be a homer because I'm a Penguins fan, so I would love to hear what you think of Sudden Death. Is it one of Van Damme's better movies, or did it contribute to his downfall? And what exactly did happen to Iceburgh? Let's talk about it in the comments, or I don't know, fill your mouth with spiders? Van Damme kills a kid and fights a I can't even.